the January 16, 2019 meeting of the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Oshkosh. Happy New Year, everyone. Would you please take the roll?
Thomas Belter. Jack Birmingham.
Here.
Steve Hintz.
Here.
Jason Lasky.
Here.
Archie Stan.
Here.
Steve Cummings.
Here. First order of business is consent agenda, the approval of the minutes of the December 17, 2018 meeting.
Move the minutes from December 17.
Second.
There's no discussion, would you please take voice vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. New business, we have one public hearing, which is the spot blight designation for 434 Boyd Street.
Close enough.
I guess, Darlene, I would turn it over to you, or Mr. Davis.
I'll turn it over to Mr. Davis at
Sure.
this one.
Boyd Street, this property is, we took a look at it, it's available. Staff went and took a look at it. We don't believe it's worthwhile to rehab. It's on a small lot. It could be rehabbed, but it'd be quite a bit of money, and I'm not sure you get the money out of it again. This is in one of the neighborhood associations. I believe it's the Menominee South, thank you.
Oh, it is, okay.
And let's see, demolition would cost about $10,000 to $20,000, and this is located on one of the lowest scoring blocks that we had in that quality of life map. And I'm sure this parcel contributes to the low score that we receive on that block. So removing this house would remove some blight and improve the neighborhood score. We have adequate CDBG funds to do the entire job. And then we would have that available for future redevelopment.
When you say future redevelopment, what do you mean? I mean,
That's
it's
gonna
a
have to be-
skinny little lot.
It's gonna have to be
Yeah.
combined with an adjoining parcel
Okay.
to really make it worthwhile.
that could be,
It could be, those are all very
Yeah.
small lots.
yeah. And how are the other houses around there?
They're very similar in my estimation. They're just not on the market right now.
Yeah.
So we have a motivated seller and a vacant building that's available. And it meets the criteria that we have for the healthy neighborhood investments that we're making.
This property is currently for sale, is that what I?
That's what I remember?
Yes, yes, it was on the market, yes.
Question, the lot next to it towards Merritt is a lot larger. Do you recall what the home is like there? That's an 80-foot lot, same depth, but,
It would be one lot away from that bigger lot. 438 is in between.
no, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
448 is, it's a,
Right. My expectation is that was combined with a previous lot, because I think they were all platted as small lots originally. So the owner could have come in and just asked us to combine it, so they only get one tax bill.
as we've talked, with redevelopment, not a house here, a house there. If all these homes are in similar condition, would that be a neighborhood to look at where the 5 or 6 lots are all
Yes.
40-foot-ish, all the same depth, that we could eventually acquire all the parcels and then redevelop the whole
I
thing?
think the potential's there. That's why the block scores so poorly, I believe, and that's why I think we'd want to concentrate acquisition and demolition on that particular block.
Okay, across, is that St. Mary's across the street?
I believe so. And if you recall, we're tearing down one on Monroe, and
Yep.
a new house is being constructed on the block across the street as well by a private individual.
If there's no further discussion, I will,
We're still on the
Public hearing?
the public hearing.
Yep. So I just need to close it.
Need a motion to close it? Or I just close it?
No, you just close it.
And I will close the public hearing. I should have introduced Pam before we continue. I think everyone may know you, but if you'd like to introduce
Good.
yourself.
Pam Reuter with GoH&I, and I happen to have materials. GoH&I is working with the city of Oshkosh on healthy neighborhoods in Oshkosh. One of the things that we work with is the development of the neighborhood associations themselves. And the property you were discussing in our Menominee South Neighborhood Association, our goal, looking at the shaded areas on this map with the 16 recognized association, is to get many more shaded areas to fill in our city with recognized neighborhood associations. The ones that have started and have been developed have really come from the grassroots or the bottom-up format, and it's truly how that's going to continue. In order to be successful, we need the residents coming and working with us. But GoH&I is here to assist those neighborhoods in the development. And with having a recognized neighborhood association, many benefits with our partnership with the city, and really working on both the private areas to try and increase those property values, but also the public spaces as well. What we're preparing, we're going to go out to area groups. I've got all 16 neighborhood associations identified with a fact sheet that they also have been involved with at the resident level. And I took this to a realtor group in town initially, and we're going to try with our board of directors to get to all of the realtors, and then eventually the mortgage brokers as well. As they sell Oshkosh, this truly is something that we want to make them aware of, that is happening with our recognized neighborhood associations. So
That's awesome.
yeah, some good things happening coming from our alliance group, which are our leaders within each of those recognized neighborhood associations, giving us the information, and again, us getting out there and trying to develop it just a little bit further.
One addition, we talked about going to realtors. We also discussed we probably have better luck going to credit unions and then banks, because some of the credit unions are very much smaller. They deal with smaller loans, which would be what we'd be dealing with the type of people to acquire some of these properties. So we think we'll have a better shot with financial institutions.
So yes, and working with the RDA, we're always looking for properties, especially within our neighborhoods, because those residents are willing to, again, help us improve those neighborhood conditions in a redevelopment or rehabilitation of properties is certainly within our business scope.
Alan, is the partnership in a way that their organization has had privy to view this property and make a decision? Or is it just predicated on being too bad?
Our standard procedure is that we'll acquire it with the expectation it could be either rehabbed or demoed. We offer them an opportunity to go through it. If they see something they want to go through, I think we looked at the Monroe properties and the Eastman properties in the last few months. I think you passed on both of those.
Yes, for a variety of reasons, our
Yep.
committee.
They have a real
That's
estate
great,
committee
yeah,
that
no,
they have a
that's-
bunch of
That
criteria.
answers my question. I just,
Yep.
making sure that that offers transparency for accessibility. So that's fantastic.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Now that public hearing is closed, we'll move to Resolution 1901, Spot Blight Designation. Approve spot blight designation, approve acquisition of property at 434 Boyd Street, $43,900. For a motion and a second.
I move 1901, spotlight designation.
Second?
Discussion?
My only question is, what's the budget? Where are we with funds for the year?
That's actually a question for Ms. Brandt, because she monitors our block grant funds. I think we have adequate funds. Yes.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
at this time, we do have adequate funds, because we haven't really spent too much of the 2018 funds since we got them so late in 18. But depending on how long the federal government is closed, it could have an impact on more funds being available.
Is there a number?
Right now, for neighborhood projects, I have about 100,000 yet, so.
And that would be for throughout 2019?
Well, no,
2018 up until April?
till May,
the-
yeah,
April, okay.
yeah.
Assuming
April
they
30th.
have a new budget at some point as well.
Yes, yes.
And so right now, there's no information as to any future funding for these types of projects?
I have not heard anything.
Okay.
HUD's basically shut down for the last 24 days.
Right, it doesn't change my
how does-
decision, it's just we often have these conversations, but we really don't talk about what the availability of funds are.
Yep.
So I think as a kind of an indicator, if there's agreement in future reports to have some information as to just what other funds are available, I think it's as scope and perspective, it's just.
Sounds good.
Okay, one question, this is, I guess, more procedural. If we assuming we acquire this property and designate the rest of that area as a neighborhood that we'd like to work with OH&I as far as the rehab, would we just let that property sit idle? Would we rent it if it's rentable until it's not rentable? So we would
Demolish it.
demolish and just
Cut the grass until
cut
we
the
can
grass
assemble
until
it.
we can assemble however we go about doing this?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good segue into the next project, because we've been doing that at some point.
Okay.
But I think we have to,
If there's no further discussion, would you please take the roll?
Stan,
Aye.
Birmingham,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Lasky,
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0.
Next is Resolution 1902, Determination of Necessity, Establish Fair Market Value, Authorized Purchase, 1112 West 9th Avenue, in parens $50,000, close parens. Look for a motion. Second?
Move it.
I'll second.
In discussion?
this one's a little different in that this is part of a redevelopment plan that the city adopted several years ago. The city's acquired probably half the parcels on this on this block at this point.
Yeah, there's several that we have on both sides of the block, yes.
So this was identified in the redevelopment plan, so the redevelopment authority has slowly acquired those properties over time. This is the one spot where we have rented property to Advocap, but that's only one out of the 8 that we've already acquired. The rest we've torn down is what I remember. You've been through the property, and I believe you're recommending this would be a tear down as well.
Correct.
You didn't see that one.
No, you didn't.
Would you like to see that one?
No. That's the agreement with the property owner.
Oh, I
The
see.
property owner approached the city, and
Thank
because
you.
she knows it is a redevelopment area, she would like she's confirmed the property needs to be demolished, and I don't have a problem with that, so.
The RDA's long-term plan, according to the redevelopment plan, is to acquire and demolish all these properties. So even the rental will be torn down at some point, and we'll offer out a proposal for redevelopment of, I expect, some kind of mixed-use type project that's almost the entire block, except for the frontage on Main Street.
Is this currently a single family?
Yes,
All of those that they have been demolished, all of those that.
yes. Yes. Yeah, all the ones highlighted in the darker black, the city RDA has acquired, and 123 is the only one still standing, and that one we have leased to Advocap for transitional housing.
And this is a good example of you have to be very patient, because we don't go and condemn properties. We wait until they're available, and we can find an agreed-upon price that block grant funds are available to do this type of project.
No relocation.
Exactly. Rise up the cost depending on their circumstances, unfortunately.
Yes.
All right, if there's no further discussion, would you please take the roll?
Stamp,
Aye.
Birmingham,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Lasky,
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0.
Next is Resolution 19-03, authorize submittal of EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant application for cleanup funds, except funds 1 East 8th Avenue South Shore redevelopment area. Look for a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Discussion.
If I could turn it over to Ms. Brandt, she has a
Please.
PowerPoint prepared.
Oh, I move, get my head out of the way.
Yes.
Fancy.
Okay, this is the site of the former Miles Kimball Printing Shop warehouse that the RDA acquired in 2009. The buildings were subsequently demolished in 2010 and 2011. The lot has remained vacant green space since that time, except for occasional temporary uses. The Sawdust District was recently established by the city through the Imagine Oshkosh initiative to provide a vision and comprehensive investment strategy to address blighted and brownfield properties in the center city of Oshkosh. 1 East 8th Avenue is within the boundaries of the original South Shore redevelopment area, as well as the Sawdust District, and the South Shore sub-area of the Imagine Oshkosh plan. The South Shore East sub-area also includes the newly constructed Menominee Nation Arena, which has been a catalyst for a number of new developments and increased private investments within this few block area. As more interest is shown in the properties in the sub-area, city staff felt it was an opportune time to apply for an EPA cleanup grant for this parcel to assist with anticipated future redevelopment in the Sawdust District and Center City. Potential reuses of the site could be surface parking lot, mixed-use commercial residential, green space, entertainment venues, and other pedestrian-oriented uses. Based on historic past uses of the parcel, a print shop, filling station, junkyard, factory, foundry, and underground tanks, fill soils exist on the site comprised of sand, gravel, cinders, sawdust, wood chips, and traces of silt and clay, as well as metals, arsenic, and lead. And those types of fill sands and compost have been identified all along the riverfront areas as well, only because of the lumber uses in Oshkosh over the last 100 years.
There's sawdust in the Sawdust District as well. Is that what that?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Davis. The RDA is requesting a $500,000 grant from the EPA to assist with the cleanup of the site. The RDA's cost share would be $100,000 or 20% of the grant, and the city budgeted $412,000 in the 2019 capital improvement program for this site, so those funds would be used for that. Public comments are being accepted until January 25th. The application is available on the city's website, and written comments can be mailed to the Redevelopment Authority here at City Hall or emailed to myself at dbrandt@ci.oshkosh.wi.us. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Questions, comments?
How long does it take to know if this grant is successful?
Once they get back into work, because they're shut down as well, EPA is federal, yes. So we were, based on the original schedule, we would know by midsummer, late fall, if we were awarded any funds. but I'm not sure how far back that will push anything, but we still have to get our application in by the deadline, otherwise it won't even be considered. And the deadline is January 31st.
It's in planned work for this year.
Yes. Well, the grant is a 3-year grant, so based on all of the activity and interest and inquiries that the city staff has had in this whole Sawdust District area, we just felt it was an opportune time to perhaps look at one of the sites that we have in that area and look at doing a cleanup grant, because like I said, it would be for 3 years. And hopefully, we would have a development that would come forward within 3-year time, so we would not have to give the funds back a second time. Yes. Yeah.
Just to follow up on Mr. Stam's comment, the CIP funds, if we don't spend them this year, they can be rolled over
Yes.
into future years.
Yes,
Not
I'm
like
sorry.
project
No,
fund to spend it.
yes. Yes.
We're waiting for the right project to fit on that block.
Mhm.
What stipulations did the EPA put on the use afterwards? Or if any?
They, to my recollection, they don't. But I'm not sure if any of their guidelines have changed from the back end of the grant, so we're just working forward
Sure.
at this point.
The guidelines we follow would be, actually be DNR's guidelines for the cleanup, is what I remember.
Yes, there would be the DNR guidelines. We'd also have to, abide by and whatever regulations and cleanup areas that they wanted. Those might be more restrictive on the lot than any of the EPA grant.
What's the total estimated cleanup cost?
Depends on the use,
Yes,
actually.
it does.
At a minimum, somewhere around the $500,000. It could go over $1 million if you get residential properties, and you have to, depends on what we find when we start excavating as well. So that's why we're thinking that it would be good to have this $500,000 in our back pocket in case we need to match the 412 that we have. So we have almost $1 million for the remediation.
It sounds from your description that there was like an endless number of different businesses there. Foundries to,
Yes.
there's Hoffmasters there at one time.
How many of these grants can you apply for simultaneously?
Well, there's a community-wide, which the city is going to apply for. There is a site-specific, but if you do a site-specific, you cannot apply for a community-wide.
Okay.
And then there's the cleanup grant, which is site-specific.
Then
And
if you put a second one in, you're competing
against
against
yourself.
So
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can put in 100
The premise of my
Yeah.
question was because of the property almost across the street, I believe.
Right, and
So,
that's
that
why,
we talked about.
yeah,
Okay.
that's, we've had
Now that
more.
all makes sense, I guess, yeah.
Since the east side is in the Sawdust District, and I guess maybe the west side is too, but just because of the other properties that we have closer to the river, we thought that might be where more interest would be at this time, so that's why we looked at that.
But there's a Sawdust District Advisory Group now, right?
Correct, because they have not
What
approved.
is their plan for that area? I mean, is
they haven't come up with a
No.
specific plan. The general Sawdust District plan that we adopted with Imagine Oshkosh had an office building to the north and parking in this area. But they also referenced mixed use along Main Street, so it might be a combination of all those things. And it's almost gonna come down to the specific developer and their proposal, but we just wanna have the $500,000 available for whatever would come along for the remediation needs of that site.
And I've been a proponent of going vertical because of the views. I mean,
Right.
Get more for views of the water than just a two-story building. And right now, the best views in town are the old First National Bank. And we've got to, I think we've got to think that way. That would free up more land for either parking or green space, but I'm not thinking towers, but I'm 7, 8 feet. That's my thought.
And the office building right there at 6th and Main Street, I wanna say that's at least 4 or 5 stories tall. opposite the Brooklyn.
It's 3 actual stories, but they're because of its age, they're very high. High stories, offices are very high.
It is a tall building.
Right, but it's only physically 3 stories,
Okay.
or offices on 3 stories, I should say.
Will the development of the old Miles Kimball building have any bearing on what can go there or would go there?
I don't know if that'll have a big influence on it.
Okay.
I don't think so either.
Has that matured any?
No. Their cost of redevelopment is more than they were expecting.
I spoke to the owner in December at an event, and he said they had, don't quote me, but I think they changed architects and some thoughts about what they were going to do with the building. That's
To
what
hopefully lower the cost, is what I've heard.
Okay, lower the cost of that. He didn't go that, he just,
Yep.
said we're rethinking it, we've hired a new architect. Okay, if there's no further discussion, would you please take the roll? I kind of wish you'd have stayed for Jefferson Street.
Stan,
Aye.
Birmingham,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Lasky,
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0.
Next is discussion of the Jefferson Street property and surrounding area.
Yes, if you recall, the RDA has acquired 7 or 8 parcels along Jefferson Street there in the 600 block. We issued an RFP and got 1 response. And he explored a low-income housing tax credit project, which did not get funded. And the developer allowed that option to expire here at the end of 2018. And I believe at the last meeting, the RDA was interested in what we would need to do to maybe combine it with something on Main Street, or even look at what we would need to do on the east side of Jefferson. And I believe the properties on Main Street, there's at least one that's still available, and I believe
Yes.
Mr. Wiesenberg did explore that at one point, but didn't put anything together that would maybe combine that with a commercial on Main Street with the residential on Jefferson.
And I did contact the owner of 656 Main Street. That property is for sale. And their bottom line price is $250,000.
That's that old stone, don't used to be a meat market along.
Yeah. And it's a retail shop or something, yeah.
I think it's vacant.
Yes, I believe it is. But I think there's maybe a rental unit upstairs, I'm not sure.
Historically, that building would be worth saving or somehow working it into whatever would be put there on Main Street or making it in Jefferson.
Is it worth putting it back out for RFP?
That's what I was thinking, we'd issue another RFP, update that.
Here in the next couple of months, as spring is approaching and people are start looking at different projects.
And the properties on the east side of Jefferson, they're all, again, narrow lots. Most were built, I think, as flats or two-family. They have seen their better days.
Some of them on the map there that they're quite narrow, they're in the 45-foot width range unless they combined them and built a bigger house in the middle of 2 lots.
Some are as small as 33. Wow, 28.
And I want to say a lot of them are rental properties along that east side.
I think they were since day one, as a configuration of the buildings.
If we were going to attempt to acquire those, that would really drive up the cost of relocating tenants, because each tenant has to be relocated, and if there's
Correct.
2 or 3 individuals that are sharing the place, we'd have to relocate all of them depending on where they wanted to go. So it would almost that would not make the project very feasible at all
Today.
today. Mhm.
And again, that's how we acquired all the properties on the west side. The property owners approached the city for acquisition, I think except for the back of the meat market there behind the 656. I think that's the backside of the old meat market, and I think that was acquired and they went out of business for that piece of the business, so. But everything else, property owners approached the city.
Would it make sense to find out who does own the properties on the east side of Jefferson?
Put that map together.
Put it together and, have we had a lot of, complaints, either police calls?
Oh, I'm sure we could provide that data, absolutely. We have that down by the parcel.
This is one of the neighborhoods that we're looking at as far as a neighborhood enhancements or stabilization with the inspection program.
Correct.
I think that would be something we should look at, is this really a problem area in the city?
So we'll look at redrafting RFP and updating that and bring that back to you before we send it out later this spring or winter. I'd like to have it out by March 1st, that's for sure.
Which isn't that far away.
No.
No further discussion. We'll go to the discussion of GO H&I and RDA coordination, and if we're left. I think we briefly talked about that while she was still here at the beginning of the meeting, so should we just move on to Executive Director's report, or any more questions about the GO H&I and RDA working together on properties and neighborhoods?
And I know there were several questions on, do we offer properties to GO H&I, and we do. As I am approached by owners or see properties, I do ask her if she might be interested, take a drive by, is it something you might be interested in, but sometimes once I go inside, it's not worth.
But they do
The
have a real
rehab.
estate committee that's been through
Yes.
previous properties.
Oh, yes, yes. They went through
Yeah.
Monroe
Run
and
that
Eastman,
I
so.
believe Tom Carroll's the
Tom Carroll's
engineer.
engineers on there.
A couple other people that are more familiar with the work that it takes to rehabilitate a property.
And the county also will be offering properties to the city once they do their tax foreclosure list here in the next couple of months. So when that comes out, I'll be looking at those too and talking to Ms. Reuter and see if there's anything she might be interested in that we could work together on, so.
Not sure if I mentioned this at one of our meetings, but I have talked to Tom Carroll's on the board of GO H&I, whose young son Mike is an architect, saying that we have a lot of these unique lots that are very narrow frontage, but go back quite a bit. And my assumption is when these homes were built, people didn't have cars, but they probably had some livestock. I'm not thinking, steer. I mean, they probably had chickens and a few other things and gardens. This is why these
Female
lots.
cow?
Maybe a cow, probably a cow.
Chickens,
Chickens, yeah.
A garden.
good rooster.
And I- Yeah.
Yep.
I'm assuming that's why, but if you look at some of the Sandburn maps, it looks like there were some outbuildings even back then but I've talked to Tom, and I'm talking, son, can he design something that would be an infill property that would fit on a narrow lot, but yet have a garage attached to the back of the house? Because I think we have the depth.
We have plenty of depth.
So I think that's kind of an opportunity for a young architect to maybe come up with a new standard in infill properties for smaller communities. Architecture, they be compatible with the neighborhood type of thing, as close as he can get. But so we're waiting to see what he does. But I think that might be a nice way to do something in horribly narrow lots. That's.
Mhm.
Mr. Davis, I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Oshkosh Arena, The city attorney has been working with our consulting attorneys on the PFAS issue with the DNR. We're still working on the language for that between the consulting attorney and the DNR's attorney and their staff. So nothing to report new on that, other than they're still working on it. And hopefully I'll have an update on the February 4th RDA meeting. Let's see. The Eastman and Monroe properties, as we earlier indicated, GO-HNI passed on both those properties. Habitat did express an interest in the Eastman property because there is a garage. So I expect we'll be hearing a Habitat present a proposal for the Eastman property once we demolish it, so they could build a house on that one and retain the garage. Staff continues to work with Habitat and GO-HNI on the Rock the Block program. Sacred Heart is that first neighborhood that we're working with, and there's currently over 26 now pending applications for property improvements, and that should be happening at the end of April. And staff is working on identifying the next 4 neighborhoods that we'd be working on after Sacred Heart neighborhood. And we'll be working with Habitat and GO-HNI in selecting those future sites for these projects as well. As Ms. Brandt indicated, we continue to look for blighted, scattered sites in our residential properties from just about any source. Everything from court and foreclosures to just out on the market. And we still use these criteria to identify those as potential acquisitions. Let's see, a lot of miscellaneous things on the South Shore to talk about. That 43 East 7th RFP that we sent out that we didn't get any responses. Fortunately, the current tenant has renewed the lease through the end of July. So we were afraid they were going to be leaving last fall, but they chose to stay in the property and continue paying the lease payments after July 27th on a month-to-month basis. Mr. Stam mentioned the Sawdust District Planning Group. They're still working on the specific redevelopment plan for the district. I know staff and continues to work with the stakeholders, and they're doing interviews right now, and I expect we'll have something before the RDA for their input later this spring. As I mentioned, the Miles Kimball building is going through a final plan revision and hoping to go through another bidding process. Morgan District, I forgot to check on the lights. Are the lights and bollards all lit now?
I think there's a couple of them that aren't on the far end, but we are still working with the property owner and WPS in trying to address the issue.
Let's see. Pioneer area, the one point that I'd actually bring to your attention that's not in the report is that Mr. Dumke's group did pull the demolition permit, and they started demolition on the property in the last week or so. So that's a step forward.
Are they do we know what they're demoing, or basically everything?
The entire thing. That's the way I understand the demolition permit, and they've started with the foundations on the north side, but that will include the building.
They own the property now?
No, they do not.
It's interesting.
Is there anything worth salvaging?
Ooh, I can tell you the vandalism is off the charts within that property. So if there was, it was probably several years ago. It's more of a tear-down project, unfortunately, at this point.
So how do you get a demolition permit if it's not owned?
We require demolition contractors rarely own the
Pretty
property.
everybody signed up on that.
Demo something arboretum or something?
Yeah.
Demolition
Happily.
contractors rarely own the property, they pull permits for it. So in this particular case, we've talked to Mr. Dumke, and the agreement he has with the existing owner is that he's responsible for demoing the property.
Contractor permit.
Well, it'd be a nice view when you park at the arena, because you're not going to see that building anymore. You'll see water and boats.
And we won't have the ongoing issues with vandalism or potential fire or ongoing graffiti or broken glass or any of that things of that nature.
Darn it, no potential fire.
Don't say that. Yeah, I'm close
It's
enough.
not down yet.
Those sparks fly, they go across water.
You missed your chance on Buckstaff.
That would have been dangerous. That was
Tinderbox.
Believe it or not, there's so many leaks, I think there's a lot of moisture in that building that helps dampen that.
Like a big sponge.
Yes, I think so.
Water and alcohol that was dumped on the rugs for 50 years.
Let's see, still working with CN regarding the 9th Avenue extension. Nothing new to report, other than they're considering the ask that the city's made regarding the vacation. Another property that we had an option expire recently is the Boworks property. So maybe after we do the Jefferson Street, we can talk about what we want to do with the Boworks RFP. Lamico is complete, and thank you to staff for shepherding that through with the land swap. That was a very complicated project with a lot of remediation requirements, a lot of asbestos. Got them way behind schedule, but they are finished now, and we've swapped the land, is my understanding as well. So 75 or 100 years from now, the new water tower will be built a little to the north of the tower that they tore down last year. Parcel J, if you recall, that the Iowa Merge Group is working on that. They continue to ask questions, and they'll be back February 4th to ask more questions, including potentially Parcel I, which based on their research right now, they might want to include in their project. And we'll wait for them to present what they have February 4th.
And that's for parking, I assume?
I expect it would be for parking, because they were very tight on parking with just the one lot. And Parcel H, that option did expire, and I've heard nothing more from the developer.
Maybe you'd like to go to Jefferson Street.
Long tram. Like golf carts.
More good news at Sawyer and Oshkosh Ave. In the last few days, we've torn down the AccuCom building. It's good that we haven't had too much snow to clear, because city crews were available to do that work. And Reps Bar should be coming down in the next month or so, is what I remember.
The next week and a half, so.
Depending on the weather and depending on
Yes.
staff
So
availability.
was there asbestos to be removed there? or-
They're working on it this week.
Oh. So as soon as that's gone, the city crew can,
We have a 10-day waiting period on the DNR asbestos permit, and then, then we can do demolition. So, but we are having Habitat Restore go through this week or next week, and just see if there's anything that they would like to salvage. Otherwise, the property owner did remove all their personal property, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oshkosh Ave is gonna look a lot different. It already looks a lot different.
Sure does. And it's on a hill. It kind of goes uphill.
Let's see, and last but not least, it relates to the Oshkosh Ave intersection. We're working on the trail plan from I-41 over to Pinoqua along the Oshkosh Corporation headquarters. Our plans are about 95% complete at that section. And then in 2021, we'll continue that trail through Rainbow Memorial Park over to this intersection. So things are setting up quite nicely for a nice trail connection from Oshkosh and Sawyer Ave all the way to 41, and potentially a loop across Congress Avenue Bridge over to Fratello's and picking up on the Wash.
One thing with the Pioneer property, could we have Emily and Oshkosh Media put out some kind of release that what's going on? I anticipate 101 people are going to, once they see it coming down, they're going to think something is going up. Could we
We'll follow up with her tomorrow,
get
yes.
that out so people?
There is no plan, we've received no plans for redevelopment at this point. But they did pull the demolition permit.
But so the public knows that
Yes.
this is what's happening. It's
Yep.
not anything new.
Nothing else has been approved. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
If there's no further questions, discussion, I'd A motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Signify by saying
Aye.
aye.
And we'll see you February 4th.
Yep.
Thank you.